Hiya, my name is Poke King, but you can just call me King, and today we are taking another shift in the content that I post as I am going to become a booktuber for this video. Why? Because despite me never being able to beat the I can't read allegations, I in fact do read, a whole lot actually. From novels to poetry to every single book in my 270 plus manga collection, I in fact do read. And I am always on the lookout for new books and series that are maybe more niche or honestly gay. A big portion of my book collection is LGBTQ books because I do seek out books that I can connect with more, and among my searches for LGBTQ books, I do come across ones that are amazing, like Boy Erased, which is a heartbreaking and moving memoir that left me in tears many times, to The Old Guard, which is an action-packed graphic novel series that encapsulates me in the world building and characters. However, as with any genre or subgenre, there are always books that leave me wondering things such as, why did I read this? What am I even reading? Where did the sanity of the series go? Why do I take book recs from this one friend, and should I stop now? Is this an elaborate shitpost? There's no way that this series ended like this. But I am getting ahead of myself. Today, we are going to be reviewing the Captive Prince series by C.S. Packet, recommended to me by a friend of mine named Neon when I asked if he had any book recs for gay fantasy series. Comes a book that is gay, but is certainly not a fantasy series. The Captive Prince trilogy consists of Book 1, The Captive Prince, Book 2, Prince's Gambit, and Book 3, King's Rising. One of which was very weird, but alright, I guess, minus a few scenes I honestly am embarrassed to admit that I had read. One is a fantastically written romance novel that I adored a lot, and the last is one of the most strange, at times hilarious, and delusional pieces of literature I have ever read in my entire life. Many spoilers are ahead, but I'm sure that you assumed as much already. But now, let us go through all three of these books as we journey through the lands of Aquilos and Vir, following our main character Damon as he falls in love with someone whose brother he killed and who captured him and tortured him and tried to kill him, and so I'll try and summarize this the best that I can without being flagged by YouTube, because this book, while it does serve to set up the plot, has some very strange and questionable scenes. The basics here are as follows. Damon, or Daemonus, our main character, was once the prince of the kingdom of Aquilos. When the book starts, we see that his father, the king, is dead, and his half-brother Castor has taken over the throne, and Damon is said to be dead as well, his brother spreading lies of his death, when in fact, it turns out that his brother has sold him to the rival kingdom, the kingdom of Vir, to serve as for the Prince of Vir named Laurent. So as you can see, the plot is already a bit sketch, but I am a firm believer in what you read in fiction does not equate to what you like in real life, and despite this premise, my friend who recommended me this series told me that it would be fine, and I should jump headfirst into this enemies to lovers brain rot. So I did! And honestly, the premise of this book isn't even really an issue here. Despite the fact that Damon is literally a slave to Prince Laurent, nothing like what you may think would happen happens. And thank God, because I would have DNF'd this book so fast if it did. But no, nothing creepy in that sense takes place between Damon and Laurent. Some uncomfortable scenes take place with other characters, considering in this lore most royalty in the kingdom of Vir keep pets, but honestly, I just skipped over a lot of that. The main plot of this book is that Damon obviously doesn't want to be a slave, and Laurent actually is kind of a spoiled brat and also an asshole to most people he interacts with, so the two hate each other right off the bat, despite Damon soon trying to become more friendly so he can escape. Throughout this book, you get to see how the kingdom of Vir functions, learning that Laurent's uncle, the regent, who actually doesn't have a name at all in this entire series, is running things until Laurent can, I don't know, not be a dumbass and rule the kingdom himself. As it turns out, the regent hates his nephew and essentially turns most of the kingdom on him, and then banishes him to do time at a border helping with a guard or something after he helped Damon with freeing some guy. I don't know, it's honestly a little jumbled. And then his uncle attempts to poison him one night while Damon is trying to escape, and Damon for some reason helps Laurent. And then they both end up being sent to the border together with this other guard named Jord, and that's kind of how it ends. And if that sounds like I left stuff out, it's because I did. There are things in this book that I don't even want to highlight, so I just gave y'all the most important pieces. My main issue with this book in particular is that I knew going into this it would be an enemies to lovers story, so I was waiting for some playful bickering, maybe some rivalry, maybe even at most a fist fight or two and plotting to kill each other with a sexy undertone or something. But no, there was zero romantic tension between Damon and Laurent in the entire 246 pages of this book. There was nothing but weird scenes with side characters, a scene where Laurent straight up just had Damon whipped and like cut his back because Damon called him a sweetheart in a chapter before, and then randomly because Damon needed Laurent to help get some other slaves in the palace to some other safe place, they became buddies and Damon saved him from being poisoned. Honestly, it wasn't great. I don't think there was a single moment in this book that made me giggle like I normally do with enemies to lovers tropes. For enemies to lovers to work, there needs to be some tension and hatred, obviously, but there also needs to be a moment in the story where the two of them find out that they actually have feelings for each other or need each other. Even in a multi-book series, there should be some small sliver of feelings, a tiny moment where the main character sees their enemy and is like, why do I feel these things for my enemy? That's the shit that I live for. Not, oh, your uncle poisoned you. Well, shit, I guess because I don't want war between our kingdoms, I'll just go with you to the border so that you can do your border security or whatever. It's all very strange. Damon's motives for helping Laurent also seem to flip-flop a bit because, as I mentioned at first, he needed him to convince the regent to send these slaves he met to some other kingdom so that they can be safer. But then when the poisoning happens, it's suddenly because maybe it looks like Achilles is being framed for the poisoning, even though Laurent knows it's the regent, and no one even says anything about it after. This book is not great. Maybe a 2-star book for me because I guess I enjoyed some of the world building, but honestly, I wouldn't recommend it.
Finally, some good fucking food.
It's so funny because I honestly think that you can skip book 1 altogether and start with book 2 and actually have a much better reading experience in its entirety, and I would recommend doing that if you're going to check out any of these books. Prince's Gambit is my all-time favorite of the 3, and for one main reason. The enemies to lovers is in full swing, baby, and Packet actually made it work very well in this book. The time that Damon and Laurent spent together at the border and unraveling the regent's plans and fighting adversaries together is so good. And it starts unwillingly too, with them both not wanting to work with one another, but they soon realize that working together they are stronger, and they are working towards a shared threat, the regent. And while working together, they both seem to have, oh no, why do I feel this way about him moments. It's so magical. Not to mention, more characters are introduced here and more world building takes place as we venture into different countries and lands and meet different groups of people, and some of the twists were actually pretty good with some of the side characters. And the ending, oh my god, it left me shook. You see, Damon this entire time has had to keep his identity secret because back during a war between Vir and Achilles, Damon killed Laurent's older brother, someone who Laurent loved and looked up to. And Laurent has never forgotten that the Prince of Achilles killed his brother, so this adds another layer of tension and issue to their blooming relationship, as Damon starts feeling extremely bad for killing his brother after learning more about Laurent and him and his brother. However, at the end of the book, at which time Laurent and Damon have had a few passionate moments, Laurent finds out the truth, and at that moment a huge Achillean army shows up and everyone finds out who Damon really is. However, this isn't to say that the book is without flaws. While reading this book, I couldn't help but start to see small bits of what I like to call fanfic vibes bleed through in certain situations. Sometimes it was just how a scene was set up, where we would get a recap of something that we just read in the last chapter. Sometimes it was small choices of words or how characters would interact, or sometimes it was the fact that constantly over and over again in every few chapters we were reminded that Laurent was in fact blonde. This led me to do some research on the book, and lo and behold, this book series was posted as an original character fanfic to a website called LiveJournal, which is honestly fine. The fanfic vibes weren't super distracting to me as someone who does read fanfic quite a lot, so I was able to look past it, but it did make a lot of sense. And there was also some scenes that seemed to go on for far too long, as I vividly remember multiple chapters that were literally just We traveled during the day, we stopped to make camp, we made camp, we drank, we slept, we woke up in the morning and planned our day, and we traveled and we stopped and made camp. Like, it was just getting very annoying. And then pretty much every major plot point happened in the last 100 pages, and it was kind of rushed. But overall, I think that it was the best book out of the three, and I would actually recommend this one. This one gets 4 stars from me. It was pretty good to read, and after I finished this one, I moved on to the last book very eagerly. With how this one ended with Daemon's secret revealed and everybody on the cusp of war, I was ready for an amazing finale. So, this book is an absolute mess. Like, I should probably summarize the plot or something, right? But that's just the thing. This book makes very little coherent sense that I don't even know if I can do that. I honestly had moments where I would read a chapter or two before bed and wake up the next morning thinking I dreamed it all because there was no way that it was happening in this book. This book was so mentally draining that I read the first 100 pages and then left the book to rot on my nightstand for over 6 months before trying to read it again. I am going to try my best to summarize this book, but be warned, none of this is going to make any sense. So the start of this book is basically this. The Aquilan army that showed up to the fort at the end of the last book are happy Daemon is alive, and they are concerned he has been traveling with Laurent, and also that he has been banging Laurent, as they all kind of figured that out, because at the same time, Laurent is acting rude and horrible to Daemon for betraying his trust, but more on that later. In the first chapter of this book, Daemon and Laurent make some plans to take on the Regent's men, with the help from the Aquilas army and the Vir army, who are with Laurent and on his side. Daemon says that they can trust Laurent, even though Laurent just found out that he is a sworn enemy and has been lying to him the whole time, and Daemon's like best friend, Nicandrus and Macedon, these names, by the way, are so silly sometimes. But anyways, they're like, dude, this is a bad idea. Laurent is supposed to get another army and bring it to fight against the Regents, but of course he doesn't, and Daemon is forced to fight a bunch of troops with his army and then Laurent's men, and Laurent just fucks off. As it turns out, Laurent was somehow captured during his travels by this guy who works with the Regent, and that is why he couldn't go to battle. But at the same time, when the battle is won, Daemon meets up with Laurent again, and Laurent doesn't tell Daemon he was captured, and instead is just being a dick, and also says that he knew the entire time Daemon was the Prince of Aquilas. Like, what? Why are you being such a dick now then, if you knew all along? And he tries to play it like he was just using Daemon, and Daemon gets all sad, and all the romantic enemies to lovers buildup we had in the last book is essentially thrown out the window. So it's like, why did we even have it in that last book then? Now we spend time with them just bickering and plotting battle plans to take on the Regent, all the while the Regent sends men to capture Laurent, but they never do. Eventually there's a scene where the armies play like an Olympic style games for no reason in a random field, and also wrestle each other nude. I wish I was joking, but this line of the book literally says it's tradition to be naked in this event. Why? I don't know. Like, it's so out of nowhere, and to put it into perspective, war is literally about to happen. It's been discussed, a war is coming and battles are happening, but I guess we have time for these random games, which this is one of the main issues I have with this book. It's established early on in this book and the last one that we have no time and we need to hurry as war is upon us. But we keep fucking around many times in this book. After the games, the crew have a party and Laurent gets drunk and slips out that he misses Daemon when Daemon is helping him to bed. For the next 3 chapters, we just have scenes where Daemon sees Laurent and goes, LOL, you said you missed me. And Laurent goes, oh my god, stop. Eventually the two just forgive each other and start being all sweet and lovey-dovey to each other, and I'm sitting here wondering why this suddenly turned into full fanfic mode. This book is one that reads the most like fanfiction, especially because there are lots of things that are repeated over and over again, as if we might have forgotten within the span of a few pages that the characters are feeling a certain way or why they're doing a certain thing. Which brings me to something I desperately need to bring up. In the last book, I noticed that we were reminded a handful of times that Laurent is blonde, and I kind of pushed it off as just a descriptor being a bit overused, but it wasn't distracting. What is distracting, however, is how many fucking times in this book we are reminded that Daemon killed Laurent's brother. I tagged each instance where this was brought up with blue tags, as you can see. I ran out of blue tags. I had 2 stacks of them. There are 40 blue tags in this book.
40!
Which means that if we do math here, the book is 341 pages long, meaning that on average, every 8.5 pages, we are reminded that Damon killed Lauren's brother. That is absurd! And I want to highlight that a few of these actually happened during adult scenes between Lauren and Damon. Like, could you imagine having an intense makeout session with your boyfriend and then being like, do you remember when I killed your brother? Good times, good times. Like, just what? There is a line in this book where some romantic times are happening, and it says, Lawrence shuddered against him as they kissed, as if having surrendered to it. The painful exchange of brother for lover. He was in some private reality where myth and man met. Which, I don't know what some of that means, but I'm sorry. Painful exchange of brother for lover? What is going on? And sometimes this brother killer stuff will be spoke by 3 different characters on the same page, and it isn't a situation where one character is talking about it and that's just a topic of the conversation. No, it literally will be spelled out 3 separate times, like, oh my god, I can't believe Laurent bonked the guy who killed his brother, right? Like, Damon killed Lauren's brother. And then Damon will show up and be like, oh no, this conversation was reminding me of the fact that I killed Lauren's brother. Like, it's so stupid. And this type of interaction happens multiple times. It was happening so much that I really started to think that there was some kind of brother killer kink that I was missing here and I just didn't understand. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I just don't know what is so hot about killing someone's brother. Does killing a person's sibling really bring the spice to the relationship? Can someone tell me if this is a thing, because I'm too afraid to Google it. But yeah, I really don't know what else to say about that. Now you may be wondering then, after seeing my copy of this book, what are the other tags for? This is the most recent book I read in this series, so my reading tags are still in it, and I would love to share the things I tagged with y'all. And I think that this is a pretty good spot to put a pin in the plot and take a look at some of these tags. We'll start with a pretty easy one here, the green tags. These are tabbing scenes that I liked. As you can see, there are a whopping 2 green tags, riveting. So the first scene I actually liked in this book happened on page 243 of 341. And it's a scene where Laurent and Damon are having one of the most normal conversations any characters have in this book, which Damon starts to talk about the summer palace him and his family used to go to and invited Laurent to go there when all the war stuff is over. It is actually a pretty cute scene. The next part I liked happened on page 270, where again Damon and Laurent are just having some actual conversations, and Laurent admits that he wants his family line to end with him, and that he has never told that to anybody, showing he trusts Damon. And also Laurent shows some actual emotion and says that he's glad that Damon is with him, and Damon tells him that he doesn't have to face the regent alone. But yeah, that's it. Let's move on to the next set of tabs, which will be the pink ones. These tabs I like to call red flags, which are just things in this book I read and wanted to flag. I'll give you a pretty chill example to start off with this line I tagged here. Okay, good advice, I guess. Another red flag I tagged was brief visions of strangling Laurent weren't helpful, which, yes, is coming from Damon's point of view. And this is 3 pages after we had that scene where he invited Laurent to his summer palace. That's just the cutest thing I ever read in my life. There's this one that I found gross that says the pounding of blood and hot slick of sweat. It's just not really how I would have described the scene. Or another very strange description where it says, Laurent came down the path that was cleared for him, as though walking unmolested through the Achillean camp was simply his right. Walking how? Or what about this line that just happens when Damon and his friend Nicandrus are having a nice conversation and Laurent says, lovely, lovely literature. And the last thing I tagged here are orange tags, which are things that I just wanted to talk about in this video, and they don't really have a theme, just wanted to share some of these things with y'all. The first thing I have marked here is just this piece of dialogue that says the king is ready to ride, and I'll leave it up to you to what the king will be riding. There is this scene I have tagged where Damon literally drops an entire pitcher of wine and is blown away by the beauty and poise because Laurent is wearing a short sleeve shirt and shorts. I have this other scene tagged because I thought I was literally having an acid trip while reading this, because Lauren has to come up with a fake name for Damon because they are trying to go undercover or whatever, and the name Lauren comes up with for him is LeMan. First of all he did was create the ship name for Damon and Laurent, but not only that, LeMan?
What's your name, Private?
La Man. Lemon.
Are you joking? But it doesn't even end there, because Laurent tells the guards that his name is Charles, spelled like this, by the way, which is the name of a character that we met in book 2 who is a merchant, and Laurent pretends to be him. But then they get to the inn that they're going to, and the actual Charles is there, and the guards are like, what the hell? What ends up happening is the real Charles says that he is Charles, and Laurent is also named Charles, which...
Angus is right. I thought you were named Angus. We're all named Angus.
Was Packet just binging Futurama while writing these scenes? Like, what is going on here? There's another scene later on where Laurent and Damon are looking over statues of kings and queens of the past, and Damon is saying, like, this is so-and-so who ruled during this time and did this thing. And all I could think about was that scene from Shrek where Shrek and Donkey are looking at the stars. Like, why is this happening? And then lastly, there's this line that many people have read, including Packet's editor, that says, "The trumpets trumpeted." So clearly, this is some of the finest literature out there, of course. Unfortunately, the rest of the orange tabs have to do with the plot, so we have to jump back into the plot. So let's just jump into the second half of this book, which is somehow more confusing than what we already talked about prior to this. So after this party where Laurent got drunk and then him and Damon basically made up, they go to another fort, but find it is basically empty, except for Damon's ex-girlfriend Jocaste just being there. And also, it's established she had a baby recently. I don't really know how they're jumping to that conclusion, but apparently she says it and she looks like she had a baby or something. I don't know. Now, Jocaste is actually Damon's brother Castor's wife, but she either had an affair with Damon or they're just exes or something. It's honestly not explained great, but they have had past relations. Which, by the way, apparently Jocaste looks so much like Laurent that later on Laurent disguises himself as Jocaste and they fool soldiers that way, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So they take Jocaste captive and Jocaste tells Laurent that her baby she had was Damon's, and she also says that she sent the baby to the regent to, I don't know, piss Damon off. Like, her motives make no sense, and they even get worse. But for now, Damon just gets mad and is worried about it, that he has a son that is with the regent who has been trying to kill him and Laurent this entire time. By the way, immediately after this scene, Damon and Laurent have some relations as if this is the time or place for that. Like, it's so strange, but so is everything in this book, I guess. After we finish up that activity, Damon and Laurent decide that they are going to go to Kingsmead, which is a place where they want to confront Castor or confront the regent. I really don't even remember. Like, their plans are kind of a big mess and change often, but essentially Kingsmead is a place they can go and you can't use weapons there, so they want to have a civil conversation with dudes who want to kill them. But whatever. And so they go undercover, as I mentioned before, and yes, Laurent dresses as Jocaste and literally shows his ass to some soldier, and the soldier falls for it. Again, I wish I was joking. And then they go to the inn with the Charles nonsense, and Jocaste also like runs away randomly, and we literally never see her again. Laurent and Damon eventually do make it to Kingsmead, and this is where the book just goes off the fucking rails. So they get to Kingsmead. It is said many times you cannot draw weapons in there or you will be put to death. And the regent ends up being there and he tells Laurent to go with him, and Laurent just does. Like, it's supposed to be played off like Laurent just does what his uncle says, but it's very poorly done, seeing as Laurent in the other books actively hates his uncle and tries to do things he doesn't want him to do. And I think that it is because Laurent thinks the regent has Damon's child, but I don't know why Laurent is even listening to a word fucking Jocaste says with no proof at all in the first place. And of course, when the regent gets Laurent and says he's going to have a trial with him or something, something, Damon gets mad and draws a fucking weapon like a complete dumbass, and he gets jumped, and the regent just takes Laurent. And somehow Damon ends up not dead and is just returned to the camp with his friends the next morning. It's so stupid because we were told that he would be put to death, but I guess they just don't care or something. And then Damon is like, I need to save Laurent, and he goes to Kilos and he rolls up to the castle and he gets captured, of course, by soldiers. And then he is being like walked past a room where Laurent's trial is, and he sees the regent and Castor sitting together during this trial, and he's like, oh my god, they're working together. And he ends up in the trial room, and he's like, I'm going to testify on behalf of Laurent, as if anyone fucking cares. And the regent tells everybody that Damon and Laurent are lovers, and everyone's like, oh my god, I can't believe that Damon killed his brother, that's so messy, whatever. And Laurent is pretty much sentenced to death, and Damon is all emo about it. But suddenly all the soldiers and crew of Damon and Laurent come in and are like, we are testifying, and it's such a mess because these characters tell these stories about Damon and Laurent, and the regent just goes LOL no, and the court just sides with him. And Damon, the smart guy he is, lets this one dude named Goyon, I have no idea, but anyways, he's established to be like the regent's ride or die a few times, and he tells him to testify, and of course he turns on Damon and Laurent to no one's surprise. And then right when they are about to sentence Laurent again, this other guy shows up who's Laurent and Damon's friend, and he's like, wait, Guyon's random wife is going to testify. And this was probably one of the most infuriating parts of the book, because this random lady who just shows up says that she had a letter incriminating the regent for killing his own brother, the old king of Vir, and that the regent is a bad person. And randomly, from the word of this woman who has a piece of paper that literally anyone could have written, everyone turns on the regent immediately. And Laurent takes over Vir in the span of a page. But wait, there's more. During this time, Damon also finds some scrap of paper from Jocaste where she says that the baby was never Damon, so Damon doesn't have a son at all, and she just made it up for no reason, and we never find out why because she literally never returns to the story. After this happens, the palace goes wild, and Castor just runs away, and Damon goes to find Castor, and he finds him in a random stairwell, and they fight. And Castor stabs Damon, okay? So bad that Damon is in so much pain and is on the ground bleeding out and is struggling to hold on until Laurent runs in and starts fighting Castor. And I want everyone to take a guess at what happens and how this book ends, knowing that this scene here is Laurent and Damon's brother fighting. What do you think is going to happen? Time's up. Of course Laurent kills Damon's brother. Like, what is this fucking book? Oh my god, I can't deal. It's so absurd. Did the author think mentioning brother killing every 8.5 pages was some kind of subtle foreshadowing? Like, I just don't know. I don't know. And then Laurent stabs Castor. Castor dies. And you know how Damon was like dying before? Well, he's just fine now. He's like, 'tis but a flesh wound. And then Damon says bells are ringing and a new king is born, and the book ends. It just ends like that. That's it. It's done. The whole book, the whole series just ends like that. To give you an idea of the pacing here, they got to Kingsmead at page 277. Page 277 of 341. So all that stuff I just explained from when they got to Kingsmead onwards happened in the span of 64 pages. Do you see why explaining this book has given me nothing but pain and headaches? Oh my god. And I left out a lot of random scenes too. And after all this talk, like back in book 1, of a war starting, there was no fucking war! This book has taken 8.5 educational years off of my life. This doesn't feel like a real book. It feels like the longest, most well-written crack fic I have ever read in my entire life, and I'm not sure if that's a compliment. This book gets 1 star from me, simply because I guess it was at least funny about how ridiculous it was. I recommend this book to anyone who wants their brain to just turn into ice cream soup. In conclusion, if you are looking for a medieval-inspired enemies to lovers book about princes, I suggest you read Book 2, Prince's Gambit, and don't read any of the other books in this series unless you want your brain to just explode. That is my final review of the Captive Prince series from CS Packet. Now, I want to take a moment to give a quick note. I don't dislike CS Packet or her writing at all. I will say that I had a lot of fun reading these books, and the second one was generally one of my favorite books that I've read in the past bit. I just can't ignore the fact that the last book in this series was absolute nonsense. In hindsight, I can at least say it wasn't boring. No hate at all to CS Packet either. I am currently reading her series Fence, and it's actually very good so far and really funny, and I can't wait to read more of it. So I do think that this author can write and make good coherent stories when she wants to, and I can tell that she had a lot of fun with this series as a whole, so I do respect her for that. Anyways, that's all for me today, folks. I hope that you enjoyed this book review and at least got a good laugh out of it. If you like this kind of video, let me know in the comments. I would love to do more book reviews. I actually want to do a video where I review my favorite Pokemon manga series, or where I read 5 mangas of a similar genre and then rank them based on worst to best. So let me know. Other than that, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, because I try to post videos once every 2 weeks, and then I also try to stream 2 to 3 times a week as well. But I do hope that everybody has a lovely rest of your day. Take care, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!